Good evening, I'm Jon Carter. Welcome to Poland Daily. Today, the March 4th movement was formed from the initiative of parents' organisations in Warsaw, including the Mother and Father Foundation. The goal of the initiative is to counteract the provisions of the LGBT+ declaration recently signed by the Mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Patla, which includes, among others, an introduction of sexual education specialists from NGOs in elementary schools.
In response to the controversial records of the LGBT+ declaration recently signed by the Mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Patla, today the Mother and Father Foundation formed a March 4th movement associating parents who are against the declaration's records.
This is an initiative which was formed by parents and entrepreneurs who disagree with demoralization of children, building an extreme left-wing constituency, but also with stealing money from private entrepreneurs. These standards directly state that we should completely get rid of the conservative standards from public life in Central Europe countries like Poland.
The LGBT+ card concerns an introduction of an anti-discriminational sexual education to every school in line with the guidelines of the World Health Organization, according to which children up to the age of 4 learn about expressing their needs, wishes and limits, for instance when they play doctor. The children between the age of 4 and 6 have the right to the information about the joy and pleasure resulted from touching your own body. Children between the ages of 6 to 9 will be given basic knowledge about different contraception methods, and children between 9 and 12 will find out how to use these methods.
These are just the records of a declaration which are supposed to show parents what they should pay attention to. Unfortunately, nowadays there is a huge sexualization of life and we can't do anything about it. Everyone has easy access to the internet and no one wants to change that, so sexual education begins from the 4th grade of the elementary school.
The Warsaw LGBT+ declaration, apart from the actions in favor of homosexual people, concerns creation of the program that introduces sexual education specialists from NGOs to assure help and support for children and teenagers. The editor-in-chief of the Do Rzeczy Weekly, Paweł Lisicki, is of a completely different opinion.
I wouldn't want an LGBT coordinator to help my child with finding its sex or what's his sexual preferences, and I bet that every parent in Poland thinks the same. It's not about the help at all, it's about talking around. It happened in all European countries. I hope Poland will resist.
Parents who are against the introduction of the LGBT to Polish schools can sign the Card of Freedom available on the internet.
The 4th edition of the Żabiński Awards was held at the Royal Castle in Warsaw today. The award, founded by the From the Depth Foundation, is given to Poles who rescued Jews during World War II.
The plane, which crashed in the uninhabited area, belonged to the 23rd Tactical Air Base stationed in Minsk Mazowiecki. According to the spokesman of the Air Forces, the plane had its technical flight and was controlled by an experienced pilot who survived. The MiG-29 plane's flight will be held until the reason for the crash can be determined by the State Commission on Aircraft Accidents investigation.
A MiG-29 fighter jet of the Polish Air Force crashed soon after taking off this afternoon in the vicinity of Warsaw. The pilot managed to eject before the crash and is in hospital in a stable condition. It's the 3rd MiG-29 to crash in the last 2 years. The Polish Minister of Defence, Mariusz Błaszczak, announced last week that Poland will replace its Soviet fighter jets with 32 new 5th-generation fighters, most likely Lockheed Martin F-35s.
Well, one of the things, we're a very active foundation that has a lot of people reaching out to us, and there were so many people here in Poland who took part in the saving of a Jew during the Second World War. And so for us, we have these people reach out to us often or hear stories. Then we work with different historians, different databases and archives to corroborate and find out the truth behind the stories. And, you know, it's pretty rare for someone to lie about something like that. And until today, we've only heard true stories and researched and found document
Poles who rescued Jews during the war kept it a secret even after the war had ended. Only the closest family would be aware of these honorable acts. However, in 1998, priest Tadeusz Rydzyk, during a Radio Maria broadcast, called for people to reveal and share any stories regarding Poles who saved Jews during the Holocaust. Later, in 2010, we published a book titled Worthy Sons of the Republic, containing testimonies from these radio listeners. That was the beginning. The tradition of helping others ran in our family. We knew it was imperative to help because we were once in need of it. I was raised in an impoverished family. We were not wealthy enough to feed many people, but we did the best we could. In 1942, when the Warsaw Ghetto had become overcrowded, 3 Jewish women came to us with their 2 children and we took them in, although people advised us not to do so. Fortunately, nobody reported us.
The results from the Estonian election are in, and in an upset, the Social Liberal Reform Party managed to beat the ruling pro-Russian Centre Party. The far-right populist EKRE party took 3rd place with a record-high 17.8% of the votes, more than doubling their previous election result.
Estonia's opposition centre-right Reform Party pulled off a surprise win over Prime Minister Jüri Rata's governing centre-left party. The Reform Party won almost 29% of the votes, while the Centre Party was supported by 23.1% of voters. The results means that the leader of the Reform Party, Kaja Kallas, will likely become the country's first female Prime Minister.
We came out of that hole, we were strong together and we supported each other, and this is a big deal, so thank you. And now the real work starts, to put together a government and start to govern this country again with some sense.
A record number of voters decided to put their trust in the right-wing populist EKRE party. Kaja Kallas, however, ruled out forming a coalition government with them.
They are the only ones that I've said that I can't work in the government with, because our values are so different. And what I mean by values, of course, all this boosting of hatred, which is new to our society.
Almost 1 in 5 voters believe that EKRE should rule the country. I voted for EKRE, the Conservative People's Party of Estonia. We need a change, but it's also kind of a protest vote. I do not create illusions to myself, but as the stagnation which we have had for quite a while has started to really irritate me, I thought that for a change I will vote for something new. Will it make Estonia's life better? I am very doubtful, but at least it's a protest to show that things need to change. The deputy chairman, Martin Helme, claims that the party's success is a result of Estonia's growing tired of radical liberalism.
We are a normal democratic reaction to the out-of-control radical liberalism that has been introduced to Estonian politics over the past 5 years or so. Absolute majority of Estonians do not support gay marriage. Absolute majority of Estonians do not support open borders. And we were the only party who defended those positions in the broader political scene for quite some time. And I'm happy to say that we've actually managed to pull all the political center towards us in Estonia.
ECRA's success follows the European trend of right-wing populist parties gaining strength. The Europe-wide elections in May to the European Parliament will reveal the true strength of the trend.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm Jon Carter. Stay tuned after the break for Poland Daily Weather. It's followed by the business, culture, travel and the history.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. In central and western Poland, sky will be cloudy but without rainfall. Rain is expected on the southeastern Poland. The temperature ranging from 3 degrees in Białystok and Olsztyn to 6 degrees in Gdańsk. The pressure will be low. Let's check the weather for the next days. On Wednesday, much more sun will appear. Small rainfall is expected in the northwest. On Thursday, pressure will drop again, but temperatures will increase to 17 degrees in the southwest. On Friday, sunlight will be back in all country. Temperature will range from 7 to 13 degrees. Let's take a look at tomorrow's forecast for our continent. In the Balkans, temperature will range from 9 in Bucharest to 18 in Athens. On the South Europe, temperature will little drop to 15 in Madrid and 17 in Lisbon and in Rome. In British Islands, we will expect little rainfall, but sunlight will appear as well. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Welcome to Poland Daily Business Edition. This year, 2019, marks 20th anniversary of introduction of Euro. European Union started to have its own currency. Poland joined the European Union in 2004, then joined the Schengen area. We are part of NATO since 20 years over, and Poland is not part of the euro. And why is that? Is it beneficiary to Poland? We'll talk about that with Jerzy Bielewicz, financial analyst. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, why the euro? Why do you think that Poland is not fit for the euro now?
First of all, Euro was a political project. Eurozone joined the country which are so different economically, and for example, Italy or Greece, and on the other hand, Germany and Netherlands. Since from the beginning, at least for me, I knew that it would not work in the long run. And right now we've got a proof. Since 2008, the financial situation in Eurozone is not better, it's worse. The indebtedness of the countries like Italy, Greece, increased substantially. So it's even financial risk is greater now than in 2008. In Eurozone, and it's quite obvious that Poland, which has very low debt load, below 50%, in Eurozone it's 86% to GDP, should not join Eurozone and should stay with Polish zloty.
There are countries of European Union that didn't join the euro. Among them is Sweden, Denmark, Britain, Hungary, for example. Can we tell pros and cons regarding the euro? Let's start from the pros.
Pros are very simple and quite convincing. There is no foreign exchange risk if you join Eurozone. It's easier for tourism, so it's easier to travel for you. You don't have to exchange your Polish zloty to euro. But on the other hand, this is pros, quite convincing for average person. On the other hand, if there are imbalances in one euro area, then the risk increases. To have your own currency is like a safety feature. In the case of crisis in Eurozone, you still have your own currency. You can depreciate it, and still your economy works fine. If you are in Eurozone with countries like Germany, which runs very efficient economy, it's industrial country, exporter, then you are in trouble, and you cannot compete because your currency, common currency, is the same for Germany and you, and you rather have a weaker currency to compete with Germany. And that's how it works. So beneficiary of Eurozone is Germany, because it can compete with weak euro, compare as if it was to Deutsche Mark.
Deutsche Mark was obviously higher cost because of great German export. There is also one feature of the euro that we don't speak that often, is the political pressure or coercion that is levied by the European Union on the countries that are in debt, that have financial problems. The recent example of that is Italy, and apparently Italy is a very strong country, one of the top 10 industrial countries of the world, yet it has been being bullied by Eurocrats.
And you have to point out that Italy considered to exit Eurozone just before parliamentary election, and Italian politicians asked central bank, European Central Bank, how to exit Eurozone, and Mario Draghi, their compatriot, answered that if they leave Eurozone, they would have to repay the payables which are created in a Target 2 settlement system. And for Italy, it's almost 500 billion euros. So their debt load would increase by €500 million euros at the point they exit Eurozone. That means that their debt load would increase by 28%. Instead of 130, it would be 160, and they would be in big trouble. So there is no way out. Once you are in, you risk that you may not be let out of Eurozone, and in fact from European Union, as the example of Great Britain right now shows.
Let's move to another corner of Europe. Small countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia adopted euro quite early in order to stabilize their system and make them make their borders more secure, because seizing those countries by Russia will mean financial problems for France and Germany.
I think it was premature. And this argument that you are safer if you are in Eurozone is not the right one. They have demographic problems. There is big emigration from Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, Slovakia as well, because the prices increase when they enter the Eurozone. And it's not good for the country. And the political arguments are not good. We should see the financial economic cons before we decide whether or not to enter Eurozone.
Just to sum up this discussion, why do you think the issue of introducing euro appeared in Polish politics this year? This is an election year. Do you think that adopting euro may be convincing for a large number of voters in Poland?
I don't think so. It puzzles me, because 70% of Poles would like to stay with Polish zloty. And one can just explain this by political pressure from other players in European Union and Eurozone, for example, Germany, that would love to have Poland in Eurozone. The cost of entering euro is huge, and Slovak Republic, what entered, was faced with a huge bill which amounted to 10% of gross domestic product. In case of Poland, we would have to pay at the entry 200 billion Polish zlotych at the very beginning when we entered the zone, if you just compare it to Slovak.
So that's about a fifth of our GDP. Sir, thank you very much for this quick conversation. Jerzy Bielewicz, financial analyst, was our guest, and we've been talking about euro. The question is open, and we will see whether the postulate of adopting euro this year will catch the voters' attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The Polish People's Republic was a state in Central Europe that existed from 1947 to 1989 and the predecessor of the modern Democratic Republic of Poland. With a population of approximately 37.9 million inhabitants near the end of its existence, it was the most populous state of the Eastern Bloc after the Soviet Union. Having a unitary Marxist-Leninist communist government, it was also one of the main signatories of the Warsaw Pact. The People's Republic of Poland represented an era of many paradoxes. On the one hand, the reconstruction of the country from war damage was accompanied by enormous social enthusiasm. On the other, it was impossible to escape the intensified party propaganda of success, and the scale of persecution by the security service was unprecedented. The average inhabitant of the People's Republic suffered the consequences and limitations resulting from the inefficiency of nationalized industry. However, it was also a time of great creativity and resourcefulness.
I'm here with Rafał Patla, the owner of the PRL Museum here in Warsaw. Mr. Rafał Patla, welcome to Poland Daily Culture.
Well, thank you.
So, I'd like to start off by asking you some sort of questions regarding the culture of the time. And maybe you could tell us about who were the cultural icons of that era?
The culture was very rich in these times, starting from books, literature, cinema, theater, TV, music. It's hard to show one iconic person, but for sure we had this kind of evaluation of icons, starting from mainly we talk about music and cinema, yeah? So yeah. Starting from the 60s, when we could hear czerwone gitary, yeah? red guitars, which were our Polish Beatles. Going further, the music changed with every decade with let's say politics also. How much they could talk, what they could say. Yeah? So it's completely different music or cinema from the 60s than from the 80s. Yeah, it's different times. So
so was there more censorship as it went into the 70s and 80s, or less?
Well, depends on the times, because when there was this spring of solidarity for 1 year, the censorship went a little bit lighter, so they could all the Barea comedies and all the Men of Iron made by Wajda, these kind of movies would never appear in 60s or 70s. Yes, so there were special moments when the artist could let's say, how to say,
express himself,
express in a smart way, because because of the censorship, this is, well, maybe the phrase is not maybe proper, but thanks to censorships, the culture was so rich, because the artist first of all had a subject to fight, fight for freedom, fight for free speech, speak. But on the other hand side, they had to be much smarter to show the second meaning of phrases, yeah, to show second plan background of the things that they wanted to express. So that's why these times were much, would say, richer than today because of the fact that it wasn't so easy to create culture. But of course, on the other hand side, there were artists that were used by the party, by the government. Yes, so if you were an artist that was pro the system, you have all the ammunition, let's say, to express. You know, even Nobel Prizes. There were very many writers that in the 50s were writing things that were not very. Let's say they were pro the system. Yeah. So also it was a challenge for artists to choose their way. Either you were pro the system and you had money, you had places to, you had opportunities to express, or you were against and you had to go a bit underground. Yes. So
now I'm thinking about this. Obviously, throughout most of Central and Eastern Europe, there was a similar system. But I'm wondering how the Polish culture, could we say that it could be defined in some unique way that made it different from its neighbours?
I would say it was richer than in DDR or in the Soviet Union, that's for sure. Our socialist system was, would say, giving some opportunities to rise the culture. It was not such a, well, we don't talk about 50s when it was Stalinist times, we talk about further times, yeah? When it wasn't such a terror in everyday life, no? So, the symbol, very symbolic is the year 78, when they show Jadi in the theater and the government block it, and it all forced people to go out on the streets and make strikes. So see how one moment expressed in the streets. No? So that shows that the culture was alive, that people were looking for culture. Well, for example, you can see in our museum pictures of lines of people waiting to go to cinema or theater. It was very hard to get a ticket. It was very hard to see the show in the theater. So people were hungry of culture. Yeah? So that hunger, I think, was that make us different than other nations. I'm not a historian, so I'm not a specialist in that subject. But what I see, what I learn.
Sure, yeah. So the desire from the public, pushes the creators on to create more and go into deeper subjects. Yeah. Okay, I'm wondering how the culture from that era, what elements we could say either affect or still exist in 21st century Poland?
Well, for sure. School of cinema in Łódź, the Polish cinema now is really reborn after many years of really low level. Now it's really good. So I would say these Polish directors like Kieślowski, who created his own way of making movies, which spread out to whole world. It's still, we see that, we learn that, and I think it's the inspiration is still big to us. We don't need to say about the music stars, yes, from the 80s, like Perfect or like Cult, that is still playing and it started in the 80s. Still, it's very popular. Still, people want to hear what they want to say. Yeah, especially Cult, I would say it was the symbol of saying things opposite to the times. Doesn't matter if it was communist times or modern times.
I'm wondering now specifically about Radio Free Europe and how they influenced public opinion at the time. Maybe you could tell our viewers what Radio Free Europe was.
Yeah, well, basically, I remember stories from my home when Grandpa was trying to listen to Free Europe, and all the time communists were trying to break the signal so you can hear that. No, Radio Free Europe was a radio based in West Germany, where they were many Polish patriots emigrated. And speaking about, heroes from the war times, from the home army, they were speaking about the things that really happens. Because of the propaganda, we had no idea what is going on, indeed, because you had only one channel, one point of view from the Communist Party, so whatever happened in reality, you would never get. Also about Katyn, you would never know about Katyn. Thanks to Radio Free Europe, you could get it. You could get that information. So for people here, that was the only source of information. There was no internet. That was the only source of real facts. And that's why that was this big fight between communist regime that was trying to, make us not hear that news. No?
Yeah, sure. I'm now wondering a little bit about the types of food that existed during that time. Maybe you could tell us a little something. What was typical of that time, and again, what is still popular today that was popular then?
Food.
Yes.
Yeah, you mean food. Well, lard became typical food in Poland, not because of the. It became popular because there was nothing else to eat. Yeah,
fills your belly.
yeah. Well, my mother used to get just bread with lard to school when she used to go. No? And that was the only thing that was. But now, as people got used to the lard with bread and pickles, it became typical appetizer in nowadays bars. Yes, so. Yeah. Food was very simple. However, also people were very creative. Yes, like we talk about culture, we talk about fashion, clothes, we talk about food. Polish ladies are the most brave ladies in the world. They could create anything from nothing. Yes? So. They were making, it's typical jars with marmalade and so on. They were trying to create anything from possible things to God. Also, the important fact is that life was different in big cities and small towns. And big cities was much harder to get food. In small towns, you knew neighbors, someone had cows, someone had chickens, you could get eggs. The possibility to get food was much easier in small places than in big cities. No?
Thank you, Mr. Rafał Patla. Thank you very much for joining us at Poland Daily Culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the reenactment of one of the most historical battles that took place in Poland. The battle known as Olszynka Grochowska took place 188 years ago, and it was what ultimately stopped the Russians from taking over Warsaw. In the year 1795, Poland was partitioned by three of its neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. They were wiped out of the map of Europe, but almost 30 years later, they rise up against the Russian forces in what otherwise known as the November Uprising. Thanks to this very battle, the Poles managed to stop the Russians from invading Warsaw, taking over the capital, and potentially spare the lives of thousands of civilians.
Many Poles fought on the side of France during the Napoleonic Wars. As a result, the French set up a semi-independent state called the Duchy of Warsaw in 1807. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo and the 1815 Congress of Vienna, Russia took control over Warsaw again. However, one of the provisions of the Congress of Vienna stipulated that the semi-autonomous status of the Duchy of Warsaw would remain in the new Russian satellite state known as the Congress Kingdom. The Polish Congress Kingdom was allowed to have its own constitution, one of the most liberal in Europe of the time. But a couple of years after the Vienna Congress, the Russian Tsar started ignoring the constitution. As a consequence, the Poles decided to revolt against the Russian Empire in 1830, an event which became known as the November Uprising. Today, our very own Ryszard Gromadzki will discuss with Piotr Dmitrowicz about whether the uprising could have succeeded.
Over 188 years ago, on the night between 29th and 30th of November 1830, the November Uprising broke out in Poland. Piotr Dmitrowicz is our guest tonight. Welcome.
W tym programie, proszę Państwa, wielokrotnie deliberowaliśmy na temat tego, czy to powstanie miało szansę.
In this program, we debated whether this uprising had a reasonable chance of success, and whether this particular liberation movement, out of all other uprisings, had the chance of bringing about freedom, considering a favorable external climate.
W korzystnej koniunkturze zagranicznej, no rzeczywiście istniało.
We would like to revisit these issues in question, which to this day are pondered by historians.
Do tych pytań, które cały czas angażują historyków.
The question was, can Poles become independent? That is the title of a pamphlet often attributed to Tadeusz Kościuszko. Meanwhile, it was written by Józef Pawlikowski. Meanwhile, we just witnessed the 100th anniversary of Poland regaining its independence, so it would be difficult not to mention the Kościuszko, November and all other uprisings, because all of them formed sort of a relay race.
Kolejnych, bo to jest pewna jednak sztafeta, w której
the path to independence.
Kolejne pokolenia przypominały o tym, że
subsequent generations reminded each other that the free and independent Republic of Poland was bound to be reborn. When it comes to the November Uprising, it was in my humble opinion a paradox of sorts. On one hand, looking at the outbreak of what our ancestors called the Polish-Russian War, that is from January 1831.
Czyli możemy o tym mówić mniej więcej od stycznia 1831 roku.
Which is when Ivan Dybich's army attacked Poland, from the moment when the Polish Sejm dethroned Tsar Nicholas I.
Pierwszego, te szanse faktycznie były duże.
Poland's chances of being victorious in that uprising were big. However, keeping in mind the events of the night between November 29th and 30th, one could be doubtful about the possibility of success.
Można mieć poważne wątpliwości.
The beginning of the defeat that was to come happened on the first night. A group of about 200 officer cadets from Warsaw, under the leadership of Piotr Wysocki and Józef Zalewski, decided to begin a revolution, as it was called at the time.
Przywództwem Piotra Wysockiego i Józefa Zalewskiego postanowiła.
However, their plan was to start the uprising to take over Warsaw.
Wtedy też mówiono, przy czym ich plan sprowadzał się de facto do rozpoczęcia, do opanowania Warszawy.
The next step was for political and military elites of the Congressional Kingdom,
Królestwa Kongresowego, i te polityczne, ale przede wszystkim te wojskowe,
to take the wheel,
stanąć na czele tego powstania.
To take over the uprising from that point on. That initial group consisted mostly of young officer cadets, often inexperienced and lacking authority. All their men were to take over. Those elders were not so eager to fight, which showed in the events of that November night.
Tej nocy zginęło.
Yes, well, first of all, on that night 6 generals died by the hands of the insurgents. One of them was killed by mistake, as his surname was similar to a name of a Russian governor. The remaining 5 either did not want to join the uprising or even fought against it, trying to push the cadets over to the Russian side. One of those generals was the famous Stanisław Potocki. However, there were also many who thought that uprising was an insane idea, like General Chłopicki, who eventually joined the uprising. But on that November night, he was furious. He thought that an irresponsible group of young people began a process which result could not be foreseen. And so, irritated and angry, he went to sleep. Nevertheless, by December, he became a dictator. He made his name in the Battle of Olszynka Grochowska.
Oczywiście został później na początku grudnia dyktatorem, wsławił się pod Olszynką Grochowską i tak dalej, ale...
Certainly, from the outset of the uprising, there was a lack of faith in the movement. There is also an example of Colonel Skrzynecki, who also believed the uprising was a senseless endeavor.
Który absolutnie też uważał, że powstanie nie ma sensu. czasu, jak pisał chyba najlepszy znawca powstania listopadowego, profesor Wacław Tokarz.
Professor Wacław Tokarz, possibly the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the November uprising, wrote that Colonel Skrzynecki had reportedly stated that standing up against 100,000 sabres is madness. The last commander of that uprising, General Jan Krukowiecki, showed a similar lack of faith. You could say that his movement was unlucky when it came to its leaders. On the other hand, this claim may not be fully true, as there indeed were some great commanders, such as General Ignacy Prodzyński or General Bem, who back then still held the rank of colonel. There were many such examples. What cannot be disproved is that we had a real-life army in those times, an army which ironically was developed under the Grand Duke Constantine of Russia. It was a well-equipped and trained army, which was able to go head-to-head against the Russian military.
Jakości przyczynił się również wielki książę Konstanty. Armię dobrze wyekwipowaną, dobrze wyszkoloną, armię, która w polu potrafiła jak równy z równym.
When we compare the biggest Polish uprisings from 1794 through 1830-31, ending with 1863, it seems like it was the November uprising that brought us closest to regaining Polish independence.
I 1863-64, to wydaje się, że wtedy właśnie, w tym 1830-31, byliśmy najbliżej odzyskania państwa.
Surely, despite all of the aforementioned difficulties, we must mention the international situation. This time, although it was more favorable, that prosperity was not fully used to Polish benefit. By that, I mean the foreign situation. The Tsar wanted to utilize the Polish army to quench the uprisings in Belgium. Earlier on there was the so-called July Revolution in France. It seemed that after the Congress in Vienna, which brought about the reinstatement of the Polish kingdom, there was a possibility of more changes. Unfortunately, that was not the case.
Zmieniło się o tyle, że królestwo...
There was a change, insofar as the Belgian kingdom managed to become independent. We did not have as much luck, and as we know, Poland had to wait an additional 78 years for the dawn of independence. Thank you very much, Piotr. Thank you.
As we can observe, the memories of the historical battles are still kept alive and well, even centuries after the battles have taken place. Clearly, the struggle for national sovereignty is still a key value within the Polish collective memory. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're glad you tuned in, or we're glad you're watching us on YouTube. Lots of stuff to see. Your best source for travel information about Poland. We'll be venturing forth soon to exciting sites around Poland and nearby. But today we're in Warsaw and we're focusing on the Warsaw Old Town. We start at St. Anna's Church and talk about its significance and how Poland saved Europe twice. That's right, count it, twice. We'll be looking at some of the secrets of the old town, some of the stories and vignettes, and just two guys going for a walk on a sunny day. So stay with us on Poland Daily Travel. We're really glad you tuned in, because why do we do this? We do it for you. Stay with us. Okay, after that nice look around the church, we're now in the southeastern corner of the church, where we're looking at a very important photograph behind us. What's the photograph about?
Maximilian Kolbe. He was a Christian Catholic priest, and then he became a prisoner of Auschwitz. What he did over there was making a decision that he will sacrifice his life for another man's life. Every single day during the roll calls, 10 random people were killed by Nazi soldiers over there in Auschwitz, and then one man just randomly picked, said, hey, I cannot die, I have family, I have children. Of course, his point wouldn't be taken under consideration, but there was Maximilian Kolbe.
By the Nazis. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Maximilian Kolbe was the one who stood up and said, hey, take my life instead of his. Maximilian Kolbe faced a very bad fate. Eventually, he died, but this is how he...
But he was in Auschwitz, and this is important to understand. There were a lot of Poles of both Jewish, I mean, it was Poles of Jewish and Catholic faith who were exterminated in the camp. And this man is one of many heroes.
First prisoners of concentration camp Auschwitz were collected from local villages and the city of Auschwitz itself, which is an amazingly important historicity from the medieval times. In the city of Oświęcim in 13th century, there are 13th century castles and then churches, and still nowadays it's a big agglomeration, but it's because of location of this area that Nazi Germany forces decided to establish over there Auschwitz and many more concentration camps. First prisoners over there were Polish, not Jewish, because all the Jewish inhabitants of Poland had to be placed in the ghettos. There were 600 of such ghettos in territory of conquered by Germany, Poland, and all the Jews were supposed to live over there first in the ghettos, and then, according to Reinhardt operation, or the final solution of the Jewish question, as we read in the history books, all the Jewish families from Warsaw were transported to Treblinka, to the death camp, and then Jewish families started to replace Christian Catholic people in Auschwitz. Some of them were killed instantly and in gas chambers, and the rest of them were working in Auschwitz, as eventually much more people who died in Auschwitz were Jewish.
Here is a Catholic Pole and a priest who sacrificed and died in Auschwitz. Most people think it was only Jewish people. It was not only Jewish people. And the faiths of all Polish people, because they were all Polish, whether Jewish or Catholic, their faiths were intertwined in the occupation by Germany. I don't think that can be stated enough. And this is one example of a person who gave his life for fellow prisoners.
Maximilian Kolbe reminds us of a reason of this philosophy, because in nowadays life, if I help a lady to cross the street because I see it that she hesitates, she cannot really see if the bus is coming or not, and I will just come and help her to walk the street. In nowadays world, I am a hero. But what if I went with her to her house, helped her with the laundry, with the stuff? Now it's suspicious. Now it's like, why he is sacrificing himself so much to another person that he don't know? And then what if I spend the rest of my life just helping her? Or what if I gave my life for her? It's difficult to understand, but this is the thing of this philosophy. Yeah. This is the thing of Jesus Christ's life, who gave his life for us. And it's so difficult to understand, just as the example that we used before. And such real acts that happened really not long time ago help us understanding the real Christian Catholic philosophy and way of being. So that's why we do think that Maximilian Kolbe was an amazing guy.
Yeah, he symbolizes what many people did at that time. And then we have the picture of the Virgin Mary.
Exactly.
About what's the significance of that particularly?
Will, every single picture of Saint Mary has the stars above her head and a moon below her feet, and also right beneath her feet there is a snake that she kills. So every time she kills the snake, because the snake represents temptation. Remember in the paradise?
Of course.
Adam and
Garden
Eve.
of Eden, yeah.
Exactly. So this is how it was. First Adam is created, and the God tells him, hey, don't eat apples from that tree. Adam says, okay. So then Eva appears, and Adam says, just in case, he explains to Eva, don't eat or touch fruits from that tree. So he makes a step forward to inform Eva not to even touch these apples. And then Eva walks around in the garden, and there is a snake. And the snake tells her, so the God told you you cannot touch these apples? And Eva says, yes, this is what he said. Touch the apple, I promise, nothing bad will happen. So Eva touches the apple, and indeed nothing bad happens. So the snake says, okay, now eat the apple. Nothing happened when you touched it, so now nothing happened if you ate it. So Eva tries the apple, then gives the apple to Adam, and then the snake reminds us that temptation is always in our lives, and there will be never agreement in a proper human life and the temptation. There will be always war, and that's why Saint Mary
there's always this battle
snake.
Between the two,
and the understanding that
so she's standing on the snake,
yes,
to stamp it out. What about the stars above her head?
It means that she's stronger than the stars, and she's stronger than the moon. And that's why if you live her life, you will be stronger than all the temptations. And by the way, the stars appear in US flag, and stars appear on European Union's flag. And this is from where they derive from all the paintings of St. Mary's, from the stars in
I
here.
didn't know that. Okay, we're at St. Anna's Church with Arthur, with Will, and we'll be right back. Stick with us. Stay tuned.